Salutations and welcome to chapters 20 and 20X of my Fire Emblem 12 Maniac Mode 0% Gross playthrough, presented by yours truly, Don951 and Mekkah.
Hello.
Chapter 20 chronicles a final showdown between Marth and Dark Emperor Hardin, except none of this is going to directly involve Marth at any point, because he would get creamed if he even tried. And after Marth defeats a foe that's been responsible for all the troubles that he's been through up to this point, I guess he can conclude his journey and we can say that we're done, right?
I don't think so, unfortunately, but let's worry about one thing at a time. So, this chapter, just like its incarnation in Shadow Dragon, just begs to be warp skipped, but the problem with warp skipping is you kind of have to defeat the boss within one round of combat to make it worth it. And in Hardin's case, that is going to be pretty tough. He has 28 in most of his stats, including speed, so he's almost impossible to double attack. And to make things worse, he's not weak to anything in particular, so the only way to beat him in one round of combat would probably be some kind of magical critical hit.
Yes, and fortunately, as we've alluded to multiple times in the past, Katarina is up to that task, although we've had to do a lot of work to get her to that point. We've had her use every spirit dust in the game up to this point, and even then she still falls a little bit short. She needs to use spirit dust from the previous chapter's boss, and even then she would still have been 1 point of attack short, but we had her use the arm scroll in the previous chapter in order to get her to A rank tomes, and that gives her the extra point of attack that she needs to reach the 48 magical attack benchmark to do exactly 25 damage to Hardin, and with a critical that almost exactly one hit KOs him with 75 HP of damage. So Hardin, like every other enemy in FE12, has 0 luck, and this is basically begging to be crit. I don't know what to think about this, because on the one hand, they purposely made it so that Hardin isn't vulnerable to any effective weapons. You have to take care of him, basically, with regular weapons. But on the other hand, the only way to kill him efficiently is with a crit, and the game gives you tools to do that, especially in the form of save points. In the process of getting Marth and Katarina to Hardin, we also spend 2 Warp Staff uses, which coincidentally get Wendell and Yumina both to B-rank staves for a later chapter. And also later in this chapter, we have Etzel use a Thief Staff, and that lets him get to C-rank staves in order to warp skip.
So through defeating Hardin, we obtain 2 new items. We get the Gradivus, which is a 1-2 range lance, a very powerful one that anyone with A lances can use. Pretty useful. We also get the Dark Sphere, which completes the Binding Shield. So this is both a blessing and a curse. The Binding Shield is unfortunately like a worse version of all of our combined spheres. It only gives +2 in every stat, and it's locked to Marth. So we can no longer trade away the Star Sphere to anyone else, and we also lose the effects of like the Life Sphere and the Light Sphere, which really sucks. By beating this chapter so fast, we also lose out on some treasure. We use the Thief Staff to obtain an Nagant Staff and a Brave Sword for reliability purposes, and we can use Palla to obtain a Master Key, but this does mean that we miss out on a Bullion and a couple of other Brave weapons that we would have liked to get, but unfortunately there is just no time.
After finishing chapter 20 in one turn and vanquishing Dark Emperor Hardin, Marth disappointingly finds out that Garneth was actually behind everything all along, and that all the princesses that he was looking for are in a different castle far, far away. So before we go chase after them, we have to go to chapter 20X, which concludes the Assassin's arc in this game. That's the arc involving Chris and Katarina. And I can just kind of sense the collective groans from the audience of people who have played this chapter before, because this is a dreadful chapter, and I can't think of a single person that really likes it.
I am one of the unfortunate souls who has played this chapter, and I gotta tell you, I really hate it. Another Fog of War chapter, and Fog of War in this game is merciless. As we said before, you can only see 2 tiles in front of you. There's no way to increase that vision through torches or thieves, because those just don't work. So our only consolation is the ability to reveal extra tiles away from our path, and that's basically it. We hate this chapter so much that we forge a special sword called Fuck 20X, just for the sake of this chapter, because it is so hard. My least favorite part of this is that enemies can attack you from outside of your vision range. There's longbows, which have 3 range, then there's also Eremia, the boss who has a meteor tome, which has 3 to 10 range. So for blind players, this is absolute hell.
And even for players who have the benefit of foresight, like me, there's still a lot of elements in this chapter, especially in 0% Gross, that make it very frustrating. A lot of RNG elements, and so I'll cover a few of those right here. First of all, the primary enemy composition in this chapter are snipers and berserkers, and both those classes have an innate base critical rate. Normally in a playthrough with Gross, that wouldn't really be a problem, because units will have grown enough luck to negate that extra crit. But in 0% Growths, we are stuck with our base luck, with some goddess icons here and there to patch things up. So even with the goddess icons spread in a way that minimizes our overall critical hit rates, most of our units still face a small amount of crit from the enemies, and I've had multiple runs ended by an unfortunate critical on Katarina or Palla. The other things are, on turn 1 enemy phase, Katarina has to dodge an enemy berserker, which she only faces about 40 hit, and that's generally more often than not she dodges. And then there's also a sniper that starts across the wall from near where Midia is, that on turn 1 enemy phase can move in one of two directions. If he moves in one particular direction, then he can be attacked on the next turn, but if he moves in the other direction, then he cannot. And that's just a frustrating 50-50 that really doesn't need to be there. Like, he could have just started in tile next to the wall, and we wouldn't have had to rely on him moving the right way.
Yeah, even if you are familiar with the chapter, it's just so annoying that you cannot attack enemies that are not visible in the fog. So what you have to do is move one of your units near one of the enemy units and then have another unit attack that unit. So for example, Marth moved in such a way that he would reveal a general so that Palla could kill him, because Palla just couldn't see the enemy otherwise. And that's what makes this chapter so much frustrating, is that you don't have a high deployment limit. So you can only bring your best units like Midia and Wolf.
Yeah, who would have thought of them being our best units? So they're deployed for a very important reason. We got Midia in the previous chapter, actually, but we didn't get a chance to talk about her because she was just kind of sitting there, prisoner to Harden. But she fills a very important role in this chapter because she's able to reclass into a 10-move unit while also preserving enough speed to avoid being doubled by any of the enemy snipers or berserkers here. And that's with kind of a asterisk, because the snipers have a very small chance to get 24 speed, which does double her, but if all the snipers that we end up encountering in this run have 23 speed, then she avoids being doubled. So this enemy phase is very complex. We have to position Palla and Midia next to each other such that Midia can reveal Eremia on the next turn before Palla can attack Eremia, and Midia ends up in range of Eremia's meteor, but also in range of several snipers. So we had to put Wolf to bait one of the snipers away from Midia, such that everyone can survive. We distributed a few talismans at the start of this chapter, such that with the pure water, Midia can survive a sniper and a meteor, but it also allows Midia to remain the primary target for the meteor instead of Palla. And on turn 3 player phase, we just need one final dance to boost Marth to the throne with Fina. The last thing that we do before we end this chapter is we have Katarina kill one of the snipers for his longbow, facing kind of an unnecessary crit rate, but the longbow does sell for 1,000 gold, so that's something that we will want to collect before we finish up this map in 3 turns. Till next time.
Bye.